Welcome to Women in B2B Marketing, a show where CMOs, VPs of marketing, and all strong women leaders in B2B discuss their top tactics, strategies, and tips for building high-performing teams, leveraging trends, and ultimately rocking their marketing careers. Made by and for women, insightful for all. I'm your host and 15-year B2B marketer, Jane Sarah. Let's dive in. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Women in B2B Marketing. Today we have with us Purna Virji, Principal Consultant, Content Solutions at LinkedIn, also the 2019 US Search Personality of the Year, and you'll see why. And now, newly added to this list of accomplishments is author of High Impact Content Marketing. So thank you so much for joining us today, Purna. Excited to dive in all about content and a few other things, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jane. I've been so excited about this.
Yeah, so excited to reconnect. And just background for everybody else, I met Purna probably 6-7 years ago now, probably at first. Back in my agency days, Purna was working on the Microsoft advertising side of the world. And she was one of the people we loved coming in to speak to our customers because she brought great stories, great actionable items, actionable takeaways that they can apply to improve their success with Microsoft ads. It was just great and a breath of fresh air having Purna as a partner to come and work with us and speak and basically workshop with all of our customers. So excited for some of that to come back today and kind of workshop with us here on the content side of the world.
Those were super fun. And so thank you for always making me feel so welcome. I will confess, I'm like, what new cool thing can I come up with so that tenuity and Jane will invite me back. And so thanks for being a good motivator to create good content.
So amazing. Yeah, Purna was our favorite for sure. So let's dive into things, Purna. First, you just are releasing, every pre-sales open now. I'll put the link in show notes, but your new book. So High Impact Content Marketing. I have that title, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you get into this and writing the book and getting this out there? What made you see the gap that needed this book out there?
So it was one of those life's very lucky serendipitous moments where I've done a couple of events in the UK. As part of my role at Microsoft, I would travel quite a lot. And then I started at LinkedIn focusing more on content marketing, much more officially. And I got an email one day from Stephen from Kogan Page, my publisher. I was like, hello, this is Stephen from Kogan Page, blah, blah, blah. I've seen you around speaking. Would you like to write a book about content marketing aimed at practitioners? And I'm like, yes. I mean, I've been reading Shonda Rhimes' book about saying yes to opportunities, because at first I could think of 1,000 reasons. I'm like, I work in tech. I work really long hours, right? Where's the time? And then you go through your own, am I the right person? Do I have anything of value to say? And you go through that in your head. But then I was like, no, I should say yes to this because God knows, I will never, opportunities like this don't fall into your lap often. And so I was like, I'm just going to say yes. And then, of course, I was like, yeah, I'd love to learn more. Tell me about it and so on. And then I went to my manager and LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, boss, I got this offer. Can I do it? And they were so encouraging. My leadership at LinkedIn they were like, yes, you should do it. And they actually gave me the courage to go out and do it. And they're like, whatever you need. So that was it felt like the universe just made this happen. Then I started writing it, and then I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into?
Right.
Hardest thing ever. And I gave birth as well. And I'm like, this is more painful. But
now it's coming out there. Yeah. It probably is an exact comparison, right, to being a mom and giving birth and the ups and downs of the entire journey.
Exactly. I mean, overall, now as time passes, you forget the pain of labor and you just remember it was so good. I got to interview, because one of my favorite things to do is to learn. And then when you teach others, you actually end up learning a lot more.
Yes.
And I ended up interviewing dozens of people who are 100+ times smarter and better than me, and getting to learn from them and channeling all of their input and putting it in the book. I feel like I'm a better marketer as a result of writing this book. And plus you learn a lot about yourself, right? Because you learn to grapple, you learn how you can motivate yourself. You go to it's not easy. And so then you go to dark places where oh my gosh, will anybody apart from like my mom read it and so on? And
Yeah.
that's valuable. And then it's ups and downs. But overall, I would say I'm so grateful I got to do it. I really love the book. I learned so much. And ultimately, I wrote the book that I wish I had as a marketer, or I wish somebody had like given this to me. And it's all my processes, because I've marketed content for 20 years now, first as a journalist, then working agency side, then working in-house, then at a search engine.
Wow. So you get all perspectives of content marketing.
I've checked everything.
Yeah.
So I've seen content from all sides. I'm like, what have I learned? What have I learned from working with like product marketing? What have I learned from working with learning and development? And what are these awesome principles that make me successful in some of the stuff that I do? I try to piece all of it together and document it. And I was like, if I can help just one person like accelerate their path to success, I'll feel really good about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what date does your book come out?
July 3rd. Oh, you're so lovely, Jade.
3rd. I'm just so excited for you. This is such an amazing accomplishment. I have not done this myself, so I can't say I know what it's like, but I can imagine, I think I can, the amount of work and effort and emotions that go into this. And it probably, how long did it take you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so the end-to-end overall about just under a year to do it while working full time and so on. But if I had to count like the actual amount of time that I spent on it, I mean, it was still, I'm glad I did it over a year, because there were so many interviews and you want to do so much research and cover like across like 5 industries as well. And like I'm talking like product people in depth at like companies like Google and Uber, and I'm talking to like agency people. And then I talk to people who've been in marketing for like 60 plus years and getting their take from all over the world. It was super cool. So yeah, it took me end to end just under a year to do it.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe it's done. I'm like, wait, every weekend I go back and I'm like, okay, breakfast done. Now time to go write. And then I'm like, nope, I don't have to write today.
Book number 2. No, I'm just kidding. Give yourself a break to breathe.
Well, let me see if the public even wants it. So.
I'm sure they will, because I'm so excited. I'm definitely going to purchase this as soon as it's out. Or actually pre-sale again. I'll put the link in show notes. But this is amazing. What would you say? I want to get into your story too and your path coming here, because like you said, you've been in all of these different sides of the coin and different perspectives you bring to the table. But before we do that, I want to dive a little more into the book. And if you can share a couple of key takeaways, your favorite tidbits from the book, or even just one, I'd be curious, like what's one main takeaway from the book that you were excited to include?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to limit it to one. But I think one of the things that was really important to me was inclusion. And so I have a whole chapter, and like everyone talks about it, and you hear like everybody does the horse and pony show about like DEI and like why it's important, like diversity, equality, inclusion, like why it's all important. But there's very little on how, or I find a lot of people talk about the how in terms of accessibility, which is so important. And I'm glad the conversation's there. But there's a lot more that content marketers can do. And I almost make the case that what we do really matters, right? What we put out into the world in our content and our imagery, it either reinforces or it can break stereotypes. So how do we pay attention to things like the wording that we use, or what could be accidental exclusions that we may not even realize are happening in our words, in our language, in our visuals, and even in things like content that people don't think of as content. I'll give you an example of that is, let's say your form, right? So many people are like, oh, we look at most forms now when you're filling out details and there'll be your race or ethnicity question. And it'll be like, then you choose one. It's like 5 things and choose one. But if we look at Generation Z, for example, they are the most racially diverse generation that has ever existed. And why have them choose one or identify with one part of their identity, right? People being multi-ethnic or multiracial is so much more common now. Like, let people choose that. So if you're having people people don't think about that question because it's just one of those standard questions in every form, or like even with gender, right? It's still so binary, like male or female. Like, why are we not allowing people to feel seen and feel like they matter? And so that's technically content. It could be part of even order forms and so on, tied to content, but we don't think of it. So that's probably the one thing that I would say that I haven't seen many people talk about yet. And I hope more people start to talk about it because it is so important, right? Everything we do as marketers we have so much more power than we realize.
That's so true. And you're right. I hear a lot about DEI and I read what I can, but it's very high level. I'm fully bought into the high level stuff, but the tactical how to do this and how to incorporate DEI thinking and initiatives into your content and what you're putting out there, it's hard to know where to get started for some people in some places. So yeah, the how to would be amazing to read. So very much looking forward to reading that in your book. Do you have, I mean, with the form is one way, like making sure you're thinking that. Do you think that's a place to start, is really just to have that mindset and have that being aware? Awareness is typically the first step of everything, right? Being aware of DEI initiatives and keeping that in mind as you're creating anything. Is that step one, or is there something more to it, or step two of the how to behind this?
I think one is just to be aware of it, that, you know, that there is stuff that you can do. A lot of people, as you said, they either are not sure where to start or they're worried about making a mistake. And so then they just try to do the same safe area. And we're like, it's not okay anymore to do that. As we see people's mindsets changing and so on, like at some point, you don't want to just be in business like a year or two, right? Most people, you want to be in business, you want to build something meaningful that can last. And so one way to last is to make sure that you're speaking to all your audience. So the same thing is, one, be aware that how people have always talked may not necessarily be how we want to keep always talking. And there could be different audience needs that we need to address and so on. So maybe sometimes it's even understanding your audience, like who's made up in your audience, like what could their different needs be? And sometimes solving for one person's need. There's a design thinking principle. They call it, like, I think, design for one, solve for many. It's not my quote, so I don't know, but it is so true. And when something is built very authentically for one type of community, it can resonate. Let's take the movie like My Big Fat Greek Wedding or Encounter, where it was so obviously written about like one particular like culture and the family, and people might think like, oh, no one else would resonate, but it was so authentic in its portrayal and of that culture and that people, that it resonated with everyone, right? We all felt like we could all relate. Like, I'm Indian, I'm not Greek, but I'm looking at like My Big Fat Greek Wedding and the family dynamics. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an aunt like that. Or oh my God, my dad would say the same thing. You could relate. It felt such a human experience. So in kind of understanding that what you can, like, it has legs and it is worth doing, is another realization too, where people are like, is it worth the risk? And it's like, heck yeah.
Yeah. And now I really want to go watch My Big Fat Greek Wedding again too. It was. That used to be the one that you watch on repeat or always on TBS too, right, Reba? So
and you never get bored watching it. I think those are some good movies.
You catch a new joke every time you watch it. This is amazing too. And you touched on this a little bit with forms, but I don't know if you touch on this in the book at all, but curious what your stance is. I have to ask a content marketer what your stance is on forms, gating content, not gating content. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it really matters on the value to the audience that you're providing. Like, if it's going to be some like low value stuff that they can go out there and just do a quick search for it or ask ChatGPT for the answer and get it easily, then why would they want to give you their like personally identifiable information in exchange for it, right? If there's something that's incredibly high value for the audience and the value exchange is clear, then by all means go ahead and gauge it, because that's going to help you with that. So if you start with your audience and think about the value to them, like that will steer you in the right direction. Like very often, if we take off our marketer hat and we sit there just as our consumer side, we'll be like, oh, this is annoying. Like we don't like this marketing. But then we wear our marketer hat on and we're like, oh, but that's the data that we can get. So let's just do that. And it's so funny. Where it's like almost sometimes like, don't think like a marketer, think like your audience, think like your consumer.
Yeah, I love that. Don't think like a marketer. It's so true.
I mean, you should be a marketer, but sometimes like think like your audience.
Yeah. It's good to pause sometimes and just put yourself in the shoes of your ICP, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the secret to making your content high impact? Or what would you say is the recipe for success there?
It is to focus on things that have never changed over time. Like things change all the time. People are like, what's going to change? I'm like, what doesn't change is you root your strategy in human behavior, because that is the one continuous thing that hasn't changed. Like century after century, like we still enthralled by curiosity. Like surprise will still supercharge our other emotions. What appeals to people doesn't change. And so, I mean, if I had to break it down to like one thing, and I say this all the time, whether through my day job or in my book, is when you start writing your content, or you want to start writing your content, don't start by thinking like, what is it that I want to say? You have to start thinking by, what will my audience like want or need to hear? And it's like that one simple mental shift. And then how do you get to your answers for what does my audience want or need to hear? Is that you really go in and study them. And we've heard this advice, like this is not new advice, right? It's like all of the best practices are best practices for a reason, but they're too superficial. Like that was my issue with stuff that even I've heard over time, because like I'm a very, like I love strategies, and then I'm really good at executing. And so then I map out the plan in my head. I'm like, okay, this is a really great idea. How do I bring it to life? And then sometimes I just get stuck. I'm like, what does it really mean to like interview my audience? Is just a survey is easy? Is that enough? Or like, why not?
Yes.
Why do something more? And so then I have like a whole chapter on like exactly all the different ways that you can do to study your audience and get a whole full like rounded experience in a way that is not too exhausting on you, but it'll be so worth it to set you up with this incredibly strong foundation of what you can build. So it is focus on people, focus on your people, because even sometimes people say that, everybody on like TikTok only watches X kind of videos. And that may not be the case for your audience, right? The way your audience uses the platform is maybe it's different from the main use of the platform. I mean, certainly if we remember Facebook, like certainly when I was like young and on Facebook, I was like horrified when like my parents or my grandparents joined Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, like I don't want to should I friend them or not? And and then I look how they use it is so different.
True. I remember that fear vividly.
I was only obviously joking in that sense, but like sometimes like I may use the platform very differently for something else, maybe for research, than for somebody else, or different from the main use. So you have to know your audience, so that way you know when you know how to reach them, or the best place to reach them where they'll be receptive.
That's so true. And you're making me think of, so TikTok, you're right. Everybody is still talking about TikTok. Who knows if it will still be here? Probably will. But people are always thinking that the audience there is, of course, very young, and it has to be this entertaining, jokey dance kind of content if you get on there. But in a B2B space, that's obviously not for most. I mean, for some that is on brand, and that's great. That's fun. Congrats to you if that's your brand. But for most of us, it's how do we get out there if we want to get in this and test out this platform. There's one person that I follow on LinkedIn. I'll put his link in show notes. I want to say his name is Mason Cosby. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, friend. But he created TikToks that he then shares on LinkedIn, which genius right there. But he doesn't do any of that hokey, like dancing, singing kind of stuff. He shares advice and walks through things that he's learned as he's learned it. So different tools that he's used or anything that he's learned that makes something more efficient. And it just instantly, he's helped me do 2 things already this week, just following his TikToks on LinkedIn. So you're right. You don't have to subscribe to the way that it's quote unquote supposed to be on that channel. You just have to think about who your audience is, in his case, B2B marketers, and what they want to see regardless of the medium. Like this is actually making me want to join TikTok too, because I'm seeing this kind of content lives there, and it's not just dances.
Yeah, it's not just dances, right? I mean, one of the things that I love on TikTok are like recipes. I get some of the best recipes on TikTok, and that most people don't think, and they're not singing and dancing. It's like, in fact, like there's this Italian grandmom who cooks, and she shares her recipes that she's cooked for like 6 years, and that's like my favorite TikTok accounts to follow. Or sometimes there's a young like college kid who talks about how he can make these meals like really inexpensively and quickly. And so like I save them up because like my son's 16, like at some point he's gonna go to college. I'm like, let me try some of these recipes, make sure he's learning them, and so on. So
I love that.
I would have maybe necessarily thought like I'm watching a college kid talk about like cooking on a budget and easy meals that you can cook in a college room with equipment. But I'm like, I'm totally watching that. And my son, like helping him practice some of the recipes so he will be a self-sufficient adult when he's off to college.
I wonder if that brand or that person even knows that this is their secondary audience, the moms. Hopefully they're listening. Definitely not, but new avenue. That's so great. Yeah. So the one thing that's tried and true is keeping an eye on your audience. It goes back to that saying, the what's in it for me, right? Only it's thinking about your audience, like what's in it for them? What can you provide them? What do they want to see and hear? And making sure you're delivering on that. Because it is so hard to get caught up in your goals and the agendas you want to push and features, getting caught up in features instead of benefits and tips and what your audience wants to see. So kind of reining that back in and getting back to the core of just remembering to think like your audience and serving. I'm also very excited to tap into this chapter and read this chapter when it comes out, because again, where do you begin? There's surveys. I love doing surveys, but it's also, you can't do them too often. You can't tap them out. And you always get this fear that you're going to forget a really important question on the survey. And then you have to wait until next year or whenever you do the next round of surveys to get that back. So it's great if there's other ways to just study your audience. That'll be a really cool chapter to look into.
Yeah, there's lots of ways. In fact, like a survey is only a small fraction of the picture that you can use to fill in. And there's just much more. And like actually like just speaking with former customers and so on, that you can get such rich learnings from that. So that would be good. And like one of the cool learnings you'll inevitably end up finding, like I would say more times than not, you'll find that you need far less content than you thought you did. So often people are like, oh my gosh, I just need to create like all of this content. Like, actually, no, if you had a few things that did their job really, really well, then you don't need to be creating as much. So it's worth it to invest your time to create a few good things and then use them really effectively. And then you'll be doing less work and still have more success, which isn't everybody's like official 2023's anthem is do more with less. Like 2020 was social distancing and like 2023 is like do more with less.
So true. I think I say that on every episode too, because that is the mantra that nobody wanted this year.
I know, just waiting for the mantra of the year to be like, sit on your couch and do nothing and vegetate. And make money. And I was like, please, can you tell me the anti-hustle culture secrets?
Right. Maybe that's the next one. The anti-hustle revenue driver.
If I can figure out that secret, I will share it for sure. And if anybody else
number 2,
please share it with me. Yeah.
Coming 2024.
Yeah.
That's so true. But I love that because everyone does get caught up in this content machine. You're right. Like we just churn out more and more and more. The answer is always more new content. I know with my team right now, we're working on the distribution side of things right now and repurposing. Repurposing is basically our word of the year internally so that we can just get a lot more out there or more value out of what we have. Because we have some great content, but it's just hard to get eyes on it, right? And how can you repurpose this into different formats on different channels or tweak it so that it does get more engagement? Like finding out what's wrong that isn't resonating if it's not quite performing the way you intended. So repurposing, definitely our mantra at Just Uno right now.
I love that you said that though, Jane, where you said like if something didn't perform as well, like just figuring out why. Too often we'll see marketers, treat their content almost like Kleenex. Like, oh, we threw it out there, it didn't work, chuck it. We're like, oh, no, you're giving up way too soon on your content. Like maybe it just wasn't the right time or the right format or the right platform, right? There's so many things that, or, there could have been like small tweaks that could make it go, even further. So I love that you say that and you use that. And yeah, repurposing is so smart. Like we need to do more out of our work.
Yes. Get it the eyes that it deserves. Change that hook, tweak the angle, add in an influencer to give some new perspective to it. There's so many ways to give life back to your content.
Exactly. I agree. It can live many lifetimes and not just one.
Mm-hmm. It's also great from an SEO perspective, right? Update that content, keep it there, make it evergreen, keep expanding on it, and don't create new content that ends up just competing with your existing content. Love that. So I want to pause. I'm sure I have a million more questions on the book side and high impact content, but curious if we can take a few steps back and hear the path of Purna and how you got into the role you're in now and your path to your current position.
Sure. And in fact, it's super non-linear. It's like everything in life I find it's very like serendipity has been the official word of this. So I started off in journalism. So I did my master's in journalism. I'd worked in theater. When I moved to Philadelphia, I was working in our PBS affiliate station here. And there's two in Philly. One is like the really big one that everyone watches, and then there's a smaller one that fewer people watch. I worked for the smaller one that few people watch, but it was the coolest. It was an awesome team. I got to produce like a nightly talk show.
Oh, so cool.
Like some of this. Yeah, it was awesome. So I really, really loved it. Then I moved over. I had my son. My son was born with some health issues. And so I realized like the life of a TV producer where you don't really know you work really long hours, you don't know your schedule. Well, it just wasn't sustainable. And so I was like, let me cross over to what I thought at that time in my idealistic journalist mind was like, let me cross over to the dark side of PR. And the dark side has better hours and pays more money and is awesome. And so I moved to this agency as their like second PR person. And I quickly realized I wasn't really busy enough. And I'm like, oh crap, I need this job. I've got an unwell baby. Health insurance is important. So is paying bills. And so then I was talking to my best friend who was in London, and she was working for AOL at the time, which was super big, like 20 plus years ago now, as you can imagine. And she was like, well, I'm doing this thing called SEO. Like, why don't you get into it? And I did. And that was the time when, DMA's listings were the cool thing. And you could just keyword stuff. It was like the good old early days of SEO. And like, I just learned everything that I could from the likes of like Rand Fishkin and Will Reynolds. And then I heard about that my friend moved to an agency, and she's like, I'm doing this thing called AdWords, Purna. You should do it too. And I'm like, yay. And so in any case, I had gone and pitched my CEO at the agency at that time. I was like super young, and you have that courage and gumption when you are young. And
gumption, good word for it. Yeah.
I walk into my CEO's office and be like, hey boss, I have this idea for some offerings that we could do. Like, I'm not really like billing many hours. It was like, what if I started this thing called SEO and AdWords? And he was like, try it for us. If it works for us, then maybe I'll let you. And it worked. For us, I tried to do it. Then he's like, Purna, like, you need to learn how to sell it. Like, our salespeople don't know this. They don't know how to go sell it. So go sell it. And that's how I got started with speaking, where I went to the Builders League of South Jersey, or the Rotary Club of this. And I started talking about like SEO and AdWords. And so anyway, long story short, I realized I really do like that a lot. I like speaking. I like teaching others. And that was my passion. And then I moved in-house. I was encouraged to do more of that. And then through speaking, through writing, and then like Microsoft had headhunted me because somebody from my friend who had met at different events and so on. They're like, hey, we're putting together a brand new team at Microsoft. Do you want to come explore this? And I was like, heck yes, like, why not? And first I was like, really, I've been startup or like small SMB my whole career. Like, is it like up to that point? Like, would it be super weird? And I talked to like Dwayne Forrester, and he was like, Purna, it's a different universe, but it's a very friendly universe and like it. And I'm so grateful I did. So in any case, the rest is history. So I've been at Microsoft for a very long time. I got to go and engage with different businesses and so on. So touched on B2B, B2C, D2C, like all of it, touched everything. I was very lucky in that role to get a really diverse set of experiences and exposure to different types of businesses. And then when like LinkedIn had this job opening, I had a friend of mine who'd moved from Microsoft to LinkedIn, and she was like, you should really come here. It's a great job. And so luckily something opened up that was exactly what I wanted to do, and threw my hat in the ring. And I was really grateful that I am here. So that's how I landed up, very, very serendipitously.
Yeah, serendipity. And it's almost as if you've manifested each of your positions. Just from hearing you talk through it, it's like you knew what was getting you excited and what you were passionate about in each juncture, and it just appeared. It's like you are manifestation embodied. Like,
I hope so. I should try more. I'm like, maybe. But yeah, maybe that's what it is, because I had a set idea. Like, I knew that in my heart. So when my son was born with a lot of health issues, like, not to get too personal, but I had really bad like postpartum, because it was so like, he was in the NICU for 3 months, and like every day I'd go in and they'd be like, you have to be prepared for the worst at all times. And so it was just so hard. And I just feel really, really down. And something that I realized that the only thing that made me feel better was being of service. And I would like go and help others and do like charitable stuff and so on. And that was the only thing that was like, oh, I actually feel a little better from doing this. And then you almost tap into your purpose. And I'm like, okay, the way that I should be of purpose is on educating and sharing and like lifting others. And that's when I found, and I'm just like, I love to learn and I love aha moments and I want to give others aha. And so that's been the thread that's been in common of all my roles. And I've just tried to find ways to do it. So maybe that's what it is. Like you find your purpose and then the manifestation just maybe happens. So
you follow that. You follow your purpose.
You're
your
like purpose.
The original Jay Shetty.
I was never a monk. So I don't know. I mean, there's certainly bumps along the way. Like we all learn, and you work incredibly hard for it, and put in the work. Hopefully, and the universe will come along.
Yeah. You touched on this too, but switching from the SMB world into enterprise and large brands like Microsoft and LinkedIn, what was the biggest shift for you in those two worlds? Like what's the biggest difference for those who have only been in one and are curious about the other?
Well, the first was like, oh, there's different teams that do that because I was so used to wearing multiple hats. And so then I'm like, oh, and I'll just do this. And they'll be like, oh, no, don't worry about that, Purna. There's like this other team that does it. I'm like, really? That's so cool. Yeah. And so in the beginning, it was also kind of nice, but then it also felt weird for me to learn how to actually stay in your box a little.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, wait, if I connected those dots, we could all benefit. And so I tried to grow my career through partnerships and like, let me connect this dot and that dot. And have you seen it? And what do you come together? And so I'm so grateful that I did the startup, SMB, smaller company stuff first, because I got to touch so many different elements and see how they work together and learn so much that I feel like I'm much more effective in my role at the company. So I still bring some of that spirit and like, they're so welcoming to it. Like people think that, oh, you just stay in your box. I was talking to another founder the other day and he was like, oh, I always just thought like corporate people, like you have your SOPs and then you just follow that. I'm like, no, like that's not the case. Like there's certainly encouragement and experimentation. At least that's the culture at both like LinkedIn and Microsoft. I've been very fortunate to be on teams where they encourage like innovation and go out. In fact, one of the things I put together at LinkedIn was I came in and I was like, oh, I identified like this need. And I was like, boss, like, can I go and do this? And he was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Go play it out and learn and so on. And I'm like, great, I'll go do it. And I come back with a plan. And it's so much encouragement, which is really lovely.
Yeah. That's refreshing to hear because you do often hear of all the red tape at big brands, right? Where you're not able to do X, Y, Z. But that's really refreshing to hear that at LinkedIn and Microsoft, there's still that encouragement of testing things out and going exploring, learning continuously. I mean, LinkedIn is all about learning. That's very much tied to the brand and sharing and community building. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, just make the business case for what it is and like show them. And then, certainly it's so much like content marketing as well, right? Make the case, like show how everyone benefits, like show the win-win, show the path to revenue. And then, you're more likely to get that buy-in. So, I mean, certainly I've had ideas that have been like just like not worked out or so on, but to have the encouragement to go out and, even like raise something or propose is really lovely.
Yeah. And it's
some red tape always exists, right? Like the things I'm like, oh my God, annual like review time. I'm like, do I have to write my self-review? I'm like, I hate writing my self-review. I'm like, we need to fund this business, Jane. This is our side hustle. Like, we'll write your review for you.
Right. Well, ChatGPT probably can now, right?
Oh, that's a good idea. I found a new use. So like when that comes, but I mean,
honestly, if that is a really good spin-off to leverage AI, if you can get a tool specifically for that, it would definitely get a lot of use. Input like a few different files that you have and it can spit out an actual summary for you.
I'd be so pleased. This is one of the most like torturous things, but I don't like doing it.
Is.
You have to like, speak up about yourself and it's so uncomfortable as you're writing it.
Yes. I don't know if that's a woman thing or if that is a marketer thing or both together is the magic mix. But I hate, and a lot of people I've talked to that are women in marketing hate talking about themselves, hate writing about ourselves, hate talking about ourselves. Like we can talk about whatever subject matter is fine, but ourselves is the hardest for some reason.
I know. It's right. And like that's what I've been really lucky to have great mentors in life who are like, you have to like, because no one else is doing it for you. Yeah. And so you have to advocate for your work. And it's just one of those things that get okay with the uncomfortableness, and then it just becomes routine and practice. And because you're right, you are your best advocate. And sometimes it takes, people forget everyone's so busy. Like that's what I'm seeing. Like,
Yes.
time just keeps speeding up. More and more things are always on our plate. And so you're actually helping others by showcasing, like, this was the impact that I had. I love the word impact. So that's why it's even the book title.
Yeah.
But it's like, what was the impact that you had? And it's actually super exciting to talk about the work. Like, I am so dorky and geeky that I really love my work. Like, I love what I do. And so then getting to talk about it, I'll be like, look, this was so cool. It actually did well. It had this result, or here's how we can make it better. So I'm like, I try to think about it in that way, like about the work.
I love that. Is impact your word of the year every year, or one of your words of the year, just to always try to drive that impact and check how you can improve and expand your impact?
It is a big word for me, because I always try to be very, like, when I'm doing something, I want to know, like, why am I doing it? Or like, what outcome or what impact can I expect to drive? Because there's always more great ideas than we could ever hope to execute. I mean, that's a marketer thing for sure, but pretty much any industry. So then if I'm trying to choose, like, what if I have option A or option B? I'll start with the outcomes. Like, what am I hoping to drive? Or what's the impact that each could yield? And then you can take a subjective discussion and like turn it into a more objective decision to make. It's like, okay, let's look back at that. So even when I'm creating any piece of content, I'm like, well, not to quote like Simon Sinek, but like literally like start with the why. Like, what do I hope to accomplish? Like, why am I creating this additional blog post? Or am I just creating a white paper because like the boss said to do it, or like 5 competitors are doing it? Or so let's say we have to create the white paper. Like, what do we want out of it at the end? And if I start with that filter in mind, then I can work backwards to make sure that everything I create is going to tie back into that outcome. And so then I'll think about the outcome, the impact first.
Love that. If curious, as somebody who works at LinkedIn, how do you feel about the creator movement really on LinkedIn, like creating and sharing on LinkedIn, the distribution side? How do you apply all of your strategies and into creating and sharing on LinkedIn itself? I'm sure you leverage the platform tenfold.
For sure, like more so with the programs and all that we build. Well, one, like LinkedIn's such an incredible platform itself, and like people come to LinkedIn as well as a way to learn and to grow, and like they see it as an investment of their time. And like certainly like I do as well personally, like I'm always there learning, growing. Like you and I got to chat and reconnect again.
So true.
LinkedIn. And so I am so grateful for it. Like I spend so much time on it every day, and like more creators coming on and sharing their wisdom, it's only going to enrich the experience for everyone on the platform. So do I apply some of my tactics? Yes, absolutely. So in the program, so I lead a global program. It's essentially like a content-based program. I also advise some of our advertisers on how they can build better content to drive more impact for their business via the platform. So I
need to tap you for that after the call.
For sure. Happy to share.
Wow. But that's amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Anything else on how you leverage LinkedIn?
Well, I think post more often, but no, nothing else at this point.
Yeah. It's just so interesting to hear how LinkedIn can be leveraged itself for LinkedIn, and also just to spread the education and obviously sharing of content and creating this community. I almost feel like LinkedIn is, at least to me, what Facebook was to me like 10 years ago, where, like you said, we got to connect. You and I got to connect. I don't really get that on Facebook, but back when I first joined, that's what Facebook was all about, like reconnecting with people from high school and like people from years ago. And it was like that for a while. And now I feel like I don't accept any friend requests on Facebook anymore. But LinkedIn, every day I connect with new people, and that's where I'm growing more of a community and definitely learning every day there. So it's interesting just how it's evolved as to the purpose. Like, it's not just for business networking, which is where it kind of started out, and like an online resume. And now it's much more like I scroll LinkedIn more than any other social channel that I'm on. That's where I'm on. That's where I connect with people and learn. So it's just interesting, the evolution.
I love hearing that, of course. And I do too. Like I'm on LinkedIn like all the time. I feel like I learn so much, and it's great for like, everyone to go in, whether it's through LinkedIn Learning or just reading through, like, finding the people to follow. And, if you're ever in doubt on whom to follow, like LinkedIn publishes like top voices lists as well. And so you can find like really awesome awesome people to follow and learn from in your community, others. Yeah. I'm so grateful for it, not just because I work there, but even as a sort of take out my employee hat, but just as a regular human hat. I mean, I genuinely am on it every single day, all the time, spending hours on it.
Yeah. So interesting. I wonder, I know we have to wrap up soon, but one thing I wanted to get to is, aside from annual reviews, can you walk us through your biggest career hurdle or anything that comes to mind that you've overcome through your journey?
We've all been through, like, at this point, a layoff or two, like that. Those are always hard when that happens, when you're made redundant, especially working in like a startup or something. Sometimes it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But then just keep going. And that was like the book's probably the hardest thing that I've done. But keep going. And I think if I had to give anyone like advice on getting through, is having a good mentor, and then also mentoring others is like one of my favorite tips to give to people, because yes, it's awesome to be mentored, but the value that you get in mentoring others and seeing others really like blossom or grow through your advice or like hit their goals, I think for me there's nothing more deeply satisfying than ever. Like, I love my mentees and like I would want the best for them, and just watching them succeed has been the best thing ever. So I think if I had to give anyone advice through everything, is just find yourself a mentor and find an opportunity to give back and mentor others. You will not regret it.
How have you found your mentors and mentees? How have you connected on either end?
So with mentors, I have gone after people who I've thought were like super amazing. And I've literally gone to them and said, listen, I think like you're just so incredible. And I really love how you do X, Y, and Z. And I guess it's more helpful to be specific. But like, I am really looking for help with whatever it can be, like executive presence or like negotiating or, advocating for myself or whatever the situation is that you're looking for, like building my personal brand or so on. And I'm like, I would love, like, would you ever be open to spending some time chatting with me about this? And more often than not, they will say yes, because people are generally much more kind than we'd even ever expect. So do that. And then how I found my mentees was I started through Microsoft. I would lead a women in leadership mentorship ring. And then LinkedIn has an impact in program. So I have mentees through that. And then it's through unofficially, where people are like, Purna, we've seen you speak. We want to get better at public speaking. Like, would you ever consider taking me on as a mentee? And I'm like, of course, like I love this stuff. So then I'll have some either through people like I kind of worked with before, or they've seen, like, we want to do this. And so that is really awesome.
Definitely recommend people check out some videos of Purna speaking. She's, as you can see, I'm sure from this episode, she's just great on stage and very engaging, as with all of the content she creates. So big reason to check out her book, because she does it herself and you can see the value of her content that she brings to the world. So thank you so much, Purna, for joining me today on today's episode. I will put everything in the show notes, all the links, so everybody can find you there. And I assume the best place for people to connect with you would be LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, of course. Jane, thank you so much. This was so fun. I'm so glad we reconnected. Thanks to LinkedIn and for getting in touch, and thanks all for listening.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And everybody, be sure to like, comment, share, and review the episode wherever you can. We appreciate all the love. Small growing show here. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.